We'll end the meeting. That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is the Dogtown Preservation Commission meeting. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law pursuant to section 20 of chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the Dogtown Preservation Commission during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:32. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Need a
Can I have a
second.
second? Did you second, Richard?
No, I wrote them, so I can't second them.
I second.
Okay. By roll call vote, Richard,
Yes,
Val,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay. Business. Open space update. Richard.
yes. So unfortunately, there's also an open space committee meeting this evening
Yeah.
at the same time, but I'm here. The Open Space and Rec Committee held a public forum on April 27th, 2022. It was held on Zoom with a very good turnout, and the MAPC folks went through the entire draft open space plan, after which there was extensive public comment. There's also some secondary surveying are being presented tonight, so I'll be able to hopefully present them at our next meeting, but it was very well attended and talked at length about the priorities of the community in terms of open space and recreation.
Now, will there be an actual document published tomorrow? Is that, there's something on May 12th, right?
Don't think the fine, no, we
Okay,
just
before I
received the
leave,
draft.
Oh.
There you go.
Before I leave, I'll let you know that, yes, there is a draft at this point. There are just some final revisions and sections coming from the committee that Richard worked on. That's all been assembled into a draft. It's 296 pages. Much of that is the inventory itself, which was really one of the kind of remaining critiques of the last plan. We had not kind of gone through the really robust parcel by parcel of the entire city, which is over 13,000 parcels. So that is really takes up a bulk of, some of the middle of the draft. And there are also some appendices that go along with it as well. So it's a pretty robust document, and it will be posted to the Open Space and Recreation Committee webpage tomorrow, as well as instructions for how folks wish to provide comment. So that is a huge feat, a huge milestone, long time in the making. So I encourage you to take a look at it. It has a lot of good information in it.
And it's actually readable.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I know you guys did a lot of work and I'm anxious to read it. So
Yeah.
maybe not all 212, but I'll give it a try, So any questions for Richard, anybody? Okay. Under our priorities, compost facility reclamations and timeline. Summary of the meeting with the mayor. Val, do you want to start with the summary or would you like me to?
Why don't you, because you did the presentation, I just sat and I thought you did a great job. So why don't you, and if I can interject, I will.
Okay. So we did get a meeting with the mayor. Unfortunately, the mayor was ill, so he was not there, but Jill Cahill was there, Val was there, I was there, Mike Hale was there, and Pam Toby. What is Pam Toby's title, Val?
She's the Director of Communications and Constituent Services.
Okay. I thought it was a very good meeting. right at the outset, Jill Cahill said that the mayor is very interested in our project. And we talked about the JRM contract and the ability to trigger the provision for an extra $16,100 per year to have the curbside collection not brought up to the compost facility, but to an outside facility in Beverly. So that she was going to, she couldn't make any commitment. She was going to circle back with the mayor and get back to me. But we did discuss that. The bulk of our discussion, of course, was the two CPC proposals that we submitted. The first one, of course, was looking for an alternative site for the compost facility. And that would involve looking at additional parcels in the city of city-owned property, and also, looking at best practices, what other communities do. Jill felt like that should be done by the city, that the city has some responsibility for that, and that the taxpayers shouldn't necessarily be paying for that through CPC funds. So she was going to, she asked Mike to look at the consultants that he's used for other projects and email them what it would cost to do such an analysis for finding a location. As far as what other communities do, she asked if the the DPC couldn't be involved with that, looking at that. Mike did point me in the direction of a DEP website that actually has all that data. And it wasn't easy to find because I had been on that site before, but I was able to find it because, he had kind of cued me in on where to look. And we can talk a little bit about that. But so that piece she wanted us to help with. As far as the second proposal, it was a little unclear when I left the meeting. She felt like that was a proposal that CPC could support, as all of us have. However, it wasn't real clear if she thought that that was too soon to put that in. So I went ahead and, continued to prep the application. I talked to the chair of the Historical Commission to get a letter of support and filled in some of the gaps. However, to do the final application and press the submit button, you need a W-9 filled out by the city of Gloucester. So Val actually called Jill back and got the update, and they feel like it's too soon for that proposal to go in because we don't even know where the site is, which makes logical sense. So I circled back with the chair of the CPC and let him know that, if the timing is right, that we may seek a off-cycle application with the CPC. Otherwise, they would surely see us next year, being the optimist. So that was sort of, kind of a summary of the mayor's office in relation to the CPC grants as well. Did I leave anything out, Val?
No, I thought it was great. And it seemed like, we kind of got the green light. I think you kind of touched upon this, but we got the green light. If we want to do some best practices ourselves, that they don't have a problem with that. So that would be kind of an interesting project for us to go to different sites and see how others do their recycling and how it works. And do you want to elaborate a little bit on that, Cindy? Because I thought that was kind of a good affirmation.
Yeah, I sent out a small document. I was going to try to be fancy here and actually share it.
I think you did share it earlier, didn't you?
Did I share it earlier? No, I can't.
You sent it to us, yes.
You sent the spreadsheet to us.
Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I did is that data came in a big Excel spreadsheet. And so I sorted it by households served, and I took out every column that had everything to do with everything except yard waste, and kept the contact names and all that, obviously. And then I looked at the communities, and I took out all the data of what I thought were too small and too large. And I think even that list that I gave you is probably a little lengthy, but I kept Salem in because I thought, Salem is not that far away. And Chris had mentioned to me at one time about Lexington. So I went all the way down to Lexington and maybe a little further. And I actually started with, when you look at the data, the last kind of columns, the last few columns are data that I added. I actually explored Salem. I went and I looked at the where the property was located. I looked at the assessor's record to figure out what it zoned, the zoning district it's in, where what the site was prior to hosting that facility, because I think it's important to show that these things don't get cited on conservation land. And I also looked up their budget numbers, what they spend on it, and what type of a facility it is. In Salem, it's a transfer station, and they bring that material to that site, which was the former site of an incinerator, and then 3 times a year they have it removed. So, and that's at a cost of $75,000. So that's just
removed to.
That I'm not clear on. That data is not in part of the DEP. I did call the contact name and left a message a few days ago, but haven't heard back. So that is a piece we need, because it'll be interesting to know where they take it. I know that JRM has a contract with the city of Beverly. And so, but I don't know where other communities are. But I wanted you to sort of look at those columns and see if you think that there's any other data points that we should be collecting, some that aren't important, what your thoughts are on that.
Great.
I would be interested in taking a look at what is the expenditure in each of these towns related to per capita and related to the total budget, to get a sense of where Gloucester aligns with others.
So would you be looking at what that dollar figure, like the dollar figure that they spend versus the households they serve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we kind of want to understand where we stack up
Yeah.
to the spend per household. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit of a skunk and say,
Yeah.
I bet none of those towns throw their compost on conservation land.
Well, that's why I think it's important to look at the property that it sits on. The city of Salem, that was the site of the former incinerator. So
Very appropriate.
Clearly that was not conservation land. It's also zoned business park development. So it's in a development area. It's the former site of an incinerator, and that's an appropriate place to bring waste. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, excuse me, I'd be very interested in finding out what the final destinations
Right.
for these transfer stations are, if there's some common locations. Also of interest would be, and this would, I think, probably vary tremendously by community, is the volume per capita. I don't know if that information is available. In other words, how much compost material each household in the community creates.
Right.
More urban communities might be less per person, whereas a Boxford or something, or a Boxborough or Lexington might be more.
I'm trying to think if that data was, some of that might be in the raw data. What was in the raw data that you might be able to back that number into is there was tonnage, the amount of tonnage that they bring in. Because they're permitted through the state for a certain amount of tonnage of this material. So they must have to account for it. So that is, I think that's a data point that's in the spreadsheet, but that I didn't capture, but I certainly can.
You sent us the source link, didn't you?
I don't think I sent you the spreadsheet. What I did is I pared it all down. I hid all the columns and the rows that we didn't need. and saved it as a PDF. So I mean, this is a very big Excel spreadsheet. It starts with Boston all the way down to like
Right.
a Boxford. And, you know, and it not only covers yard waste, it covers every single kind of waste, you know, solid waste, recycling, everything they encompass. So it's a huge document. So that's why I just started paring it down.
Yeah, I would bet there would be someone at DEP in the Northeast region that we could speak to, or in Boston, who would be sort of the coordinator for this.
Chris, did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore what Leslie said in terms of the details and seeing what kind of localities any of these sites might be on. I was talking to someone very knowledgeable environmental consultant who lives in Newbury, and he says they don't do anything with their yard waste. People just dump it where they want to, which I found incredible, but this person's a very credible source plugged into the system. So I think understanding specifically where different communities put their stuff is worth figuring out.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Cindy, can you, and maybe Val also, help us understand what it is the city is asking to do that will incentivize them to change decades of practice?
Well, my understanding of the meeting is that Jill was going to, the reason why I asked about the open space plan and when it's going to be an actual document is Greg has apparently run an inventory of every single property in the city owned by the city. The reason why you want that data is a variety of things you can, you know, for things you might want to do. So we can use that data. She was going to have them look at that data and see if they saw sites, huh?
Them meaning who? Who's the them?
City staff, planning.
Planning.
Yep, city staff. She was asking for our assistance in seeing what other communities do. I imagine they want to see, you know, where people put it, how they, you know, what the cost is, different practices for an analysis. And I think it boosts our case. Say we look at 10 communities. I'm guessing that 10 communities are not going to have their yard waste sited on conservation land. I think that that's a tremendous argument when we are proposing, when our advice to the city council or the mayor is that this really needs to be moved. These other communities don't cite it on conservation land. Parallel to that, city staff is working on a site. So because Jill felt like the city should be responsible for some of this, not CPC funds, that was the part that she was going to instruct staff to look at, and she asked us to look at the practices of other communities.
So can I make a suggestion? So I love what you did in Salem, but we had talked quite a bit about like in getting more of us involved in having like a task force on something. So what if Cindy, maybe you and someone else, I could work with you on it, or someone else, and we could come up with a list of like 10 questions, and we could each sign up for one of the municipalities that is listed, and we could go and visit the site and answer the standard common questions that we feel are important, like some of the questions that you asked in Salem, like what type of parcel is it on, what was it before, just a bunch of standard kind of best practice questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could bring it back in and share it, and maybe do another trip to another place. And there are 5 of us here, and in a month or two we could have 10 sites visit, and we can have a little summary about each and kind of a presentation. I think that might be a nice way that we could do a little bit of just a little bit of outreach, best practice, and come up with something to share with city staff. to show them that that they told us we'd be interested in your best practices, and we went and did it.
Right. I like that idea. And we have sort of, how I envision is that some of the work that we want to do
Mhm.
that we probably could do with smaller working groups,
Mhm.
not all of us being on the working group, and even, solicit some other folks from the community to maybe serve on some of these working groups, because I think that all 5 of us don't need to work on this particular document. I think if you and I want to work on it, great. And, there may be some people in the communities. I'd prefer maybe Chris to work on the consultant piece of restoration and things like that. But I think you're right. I think we need maybe a few more bodies and some working groups to be able to wrap this out quick. The data that I was able to grab from Salem, I actually haven't received a call back yet, so I wasn't able to ask anybody specific questions. But this is all data that's out there. This is all data that you go to the city of Salem, you can look up any piece of property, you can see what it's zoned, you can see what it's worth, you can go to any city's budget and see what they spend, which is where I came up with the 75,000. But I did want to ask you specifically, I noticed in the city of Gloucester budget that I looked for the DPW budget to see if our 16,100 was in there. I didn't see it, but there was a huge line item in DPW's budget for recycling and different things like that. So I would love it if you would work with us on that budget piece and where I could find a more detailed analysis of what that money covers, because I don't know if our 16,100 went into the budget.
The 16,100 that,
For the JRM, to have JRM take the curbside collection outside of Gloucester.
right. So we don't know if they've even budgeted that.
We don't, because when I looked on the budget summary, the draft budget from the mayor,
Yeah.
there is line items for DPW, and one of the last one that mentions recycling and all that had a very, very large increase. But I don't know what it's for. There wasn't any detail
Okay.
that amount.
So I can give Kenny Costa, the auditor who actually works for the city council, I can give him a call and ask him to tell me if there was something that was added. And then I'll be attending
or if that's part of it, because it's just it says recycle, it says a whole bunch of, it has to do with trash and recycling and all that. So if when there's a line item like that, is there a detail sheet behind it that says details?
Right. So I can check that out. I think that's a fair question. And I'm also going to be attending the DPW budget meeting a week from, I think it's not next Wednesday, the following Wednesday. So it's a 1 hour line item walkthrough with Mike Hale. So that's always a good opportunity to ask questions. But I can dig into that before that meeting by calling Kenny.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
Mike Hale is a member of this commission, and we haven't seen him. I don't know when was the last time he attended. This is really critical information. This has been a big focus of ours over the last 2 months to try to get this budget in to handle JRM. And it is, I think, a matter of general concern that a member of our commission is not in communication with us about this.
So I understand. I think one of our issues is that his inability to attend the meetings at the time when we have them, which is a problem.
I'm a little resistant to that explanation because we have been in communication with him by email. He hasn't responded, and we have made every attempt to change these meetings around his schedule, and he has not attended.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really think that's the explanation.
Mm-hmm. we did have a productive conversation with him in the meeting with Jill Cahill, which I thought was very helpful. And it's obvious that he has a lot of respect for Cindy. And I thought the conversation was really productive, but I completely understand what you're saying.
Well, I would like for us to consider making a direct ask to Mike to have a deputy assigned to this meeting, either officially or unofficially, so that we don't lose this critical communication channel. He's essential to our work. And if he's disconnected from the work, we really will not be able to accomplish our mission.
I think in the ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't it say Public Works Director or designee?
I don't think it does. Oh, you think it does, Rich?
I think so.
For
I
some
think it
reason.
does. Because I need to make a couple of changes to the ordinance. One of the things I mentioned to Cindy is that we're looking at making when city council members are on any type of board and commission, that we should be noted as non-voting or ex officio members. And for the Dogtown Preservation Commission, the city councilor is actually a voting member, and I'm not sure if that's appropriate. So we're looking, Jason Grow is working on all of the ordinances that we have and seeing how the city council is recognized in those. So we're going to be looking at the ordinances anyway, and I can take a look at this, but I've got if you guys want to keep talking, I can just pull this up and tell you, because that would be a good opportunity. I do think it says or designee. And if it does that, then that will be easy for us to ask Mike if he could begin sending someone to the meetings.
Well, I understand Mike expressed some frustration that he was not aware of the CPC applications, even though he was copied on those and he didn't attend the meetings when those were discussed. And I think we don't want him to be blindsided by our work, and nor can we really accomplish it without his working partnership to guide its work. So I wonder where in this commission does the authority sit to directly ask Mike to attend or send a designee?
So I just looked at the ordinance, and it does say or designee. Would we want a formal motion to?
I think that would be a good idea. And then I could make a request to the mayor. I could bring that forward as a request. So I think it's a good idea.
Well, do we want to necessarily bring the mayor in at this point? My thought is just the motion would be to direct the chairperson to speak to Mike Hale and ask that he attend or appoint official.
And I'm happy to do
designee.
that without a motion if you'd like. Honestly, I thought it was just the DPW director. I didn't realize it was a designee. I know that when Mike and I have spoken in the past, I think city staff would prefer to meet during the day. However, the public needs us to meet after 5:30. So there's this, disconnect, and he goes to a lot of meetings, and he thought that there would be fewer DPC meetings than there are. So, but I am happy to shoot him an email or call him and ask him if he could designate somebody else if he can't attend. Or if you're more comfortable, you certainly can, we can make a motion and you can designate for me to do that. It's up to you. It's what your comfort level is, Leslie.
I suggest a motion.
Okay. Would you like to make?
That reflects the importance of this to the commission. If it turns out that this really is not, it's not realistic for Mike or even for a designee to attend, then I would say we have to rethink the commission structure and the mission. We just can't operate out as an unattached satellite.
Would you like to make the motion?
Let me see. I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
Motion is to recommend that the chair invite Mike Hale to attend meetings or to designate an alternative, comma, that the working partnership with DPW is essential to the success of the mission.
Cindy, you're muted.
Sorry. Did you get that, Richard?
Working on it.
Okay.
I have that Leslie made a motion that the chair officially request MH Mike Hale to attend meetings or appoint a designee, that semicolon working relationship is critical to mission of working relationship with DPW is critical to the mission of the DPC.
Is that a correct characterization, Leslie?
That's my thought on how to frame it.
Okay. A motion has been made. Do I have a second?
Second,
Any discussion? By roll call vote, Richard?
Yes,
Cindy, yes. Val?
Yes,
Chris?
yes,
Leslie?
Yep.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay. All right, where are we at here? Okay, so we talked about the sort of practices of other communities in gathering that data. Val, if you want to work on that with me, we can develop that a little bit further.
that would be really fun to do.
I mean, I don't mind doing that at all. Like I said, a lot of it you can do, just with your fingertips. So,
and I'd be willing to pick up a piece of that if that was good. I mean, I think expediting these things is a good thing.
We want to get it done quickly because, we want to move forward with this.
Exactly.
We want to make a recommendation.
Right.
And there are two pieces as I see it, as we've described it. One is setting out the key questions, and then second, contacting appropriate authorities in the given towns to see what their practices are. And how
Right.
Leslie, I will add that, try to find that data point of tonnage versus people served. I can tell you that
I was more interested in the cost per town budget, per capita. You know what I mean?
Oh, so you want the total cost of the
How much are we
facility
spending? Yeah, per house.
versus what the total DPW budget is?
Mhm.
Okay. I do need to mention that finding out the expenses of our compost facility is also a little bit difficult because there's the stipend, there's the overtime cost, there's the 14,000 to rent the wood chipper or something. All that's about only 34,000. But what I can't figure out, because it's rolled into roads, is that road needs a lot of maintenance. And I think that road, there's been a lot of maintenance on that. And, so there's a cost kind of associated with that. So we need kind of to know that number, because when we propose spending some of the city's money down the road as we phase out this facility, if we can, we need to show them the other side of the ledger, that would go away. So, I think it's important that we figure out that cost as well. So maybe when we figure out the budget detail, we can find some expense detail. Just a thought.
Great. And can I just mention that both Phil Swartz and Diane Samuelson are on the call. And so if we're looking for extra people to kind of help with some of this best practice opportunities, it would be great to get some folks that are actually coming, sitting in our calls and listening to see if they want to help as well.
Okay. And Phil has actually offered his assistance on things as we need him. He has emailed me before, so that'd be great.
Great. He actually has his hand raised right now. He put it down.
Oh,
but
he has to wait till we get to public comment though. So, all right, so it's Val and me. And Chris, did you want to?
Sure.
that's enough because it should
Right,
only
more
be
than-
3
Yeah.
commissioners. So we can work on that piece. The other piece, and Richard?
I was just saying, once these questions are done, I'd be very happy to make calls to communities or make site visits.
And that goes for me as well.
Okay, once we have our data points that we're looking to capture down, we can compile them and then we can just split them up. But the 3 of us, me, Val, and Chris, will work on the criteria that we're looking for.
Great. And I'd like to, once we come up with that draft, I wouldn't mind checking it in with Mike, just to say, are these the best questions? Because he's aware that.
Yeah, and we can definitely,
Yeah.
we should loop him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, good idea. Yep.
Because he has a lot of knowledge, and he is
Yeah.
the one that pointed me in the direction of the DEP site.
Right.
So,
Cool.
so next is restoration. If we were to ever get to the point where we could actually restore that site, and Chris, you had some updates on that, didn't you?
Yes, if you want the conversation I had with Mike DeRosa, you want me to
Yeah, that would be
discuss
great.
that? Okay. So at the recommendation of a number of people who had worked with him, I contacted Michael DeRosa, who has an environmental consulting firm based in Rowley. He's worked with Gloucester before. I think he's currently consulting on some cases at the Conservation Commission here. You can look up his website. It's Michael DeRosa Environmental Consulting, or words to that effect, which is easily Googled. He's very well credentialed. And I know I had a number of entities in mind. I'm an overseer at the Native Plant Trust, which is a national organization that does restoration work. Mass Audubon does restoration work. The state does restoration work. But this seemed the best sort of entity to sort of investigate. So I had a brief Zoom call with him, described the situation at the compost dump, giving him just sort of the basics. He is very familiar with Dogtown. Well, not as familiar as some of us, but he knows the area. He had an amazing map program in which he was able to call up physically the map of Dogtown and not only focus in on the compost facility itself and zoom in on it quite closely to the degree that you could see the leaf bags and all of that kind of thing. He was also able to focus in on different habitat types, like the Vivian fens. He was able to focus in on the Vivian fens, which is where the globally endangered orchid has been, at least. And not only could he focus on the different habitats, all of the vernal pools he could pull out, but he also could pull out the designation for any one of those, so that because of the fact that the orchid is a listed species, it has a designation number. You say, oh, I see, it's a listed species. There's a listed species here. So we were able to talk about that. And he was able to see which of the vernal pools, namely most, if not all of them, have been certified. So very comprehensive map. And clearly knowing his work. And he had an assistant there as well who does some of the work, who's also well credentialed. So again, describe the process to him. He's a busy guy, as you can imagine, but he's clearly, I caught his attention. He's very interested in this because it's a very worthwhile, I think, project. He's a very conservation-minded kind of guy. And so we agree in terms of next steps. We agreed that maybe the next thing to do would be to have a site visit with him and have another member of the commission join that as well, so he could actually see what was going on the ground, and we could have a further discussion of what the need was. I gave him a hypothetical sense of what I thought the restoration would involve in terms of cleaning the site and clearing it not only of any toxics that are there, but also of any invasives, plant invasives or other things, and that the idea would be to restore it to a native habitat that was characteristic of one of the habitats, probably at sort of a early successional stage like heathland, that would be appropriate for the site. And sort of he totally gets all of that. But obviously, you know, being on the site and having a reality check about all of that and talking about some of the details that would emerge and looking at it would be valuable. So that was my little research piece. Rich has a question.
Yeah,
Rich?
one question, one comment. Was the software, did he use Oliver or was some?
I don't know, and I should have asked, but we were talking about other things, and I had a couple of other agenda items not related to the DPC that we started talking about, so I should have asked, but it was I hadn't seen anything as sophisticated as
So
that.
I've worked with Mike a lot.
Okay.
Worked at the same firm for a while. He'd actually be a very good person, I think, to bring in for some initial discussions. And
Yep.
He's also an LSP like I was.
Yep.
So is familiar with hazardous waste and is currently actually producing a restoration plan for the Squam Rock Land Trust.
Okay.
That is a balance of recreational use and native plant restoration. So it's really, it's timely.
Right. So you think this is a good direction to go in, kind of?
I think it's a great idea.
Good.
I do too. Yeah.
I'm a member of Squam Rock Land Trust too.
Me too.
Very cheap. It's about $20 a year, and I get to, it's awesome.
It's the best in the world.
So Chris, the next steps would be to do a site visit?
Yes, he just further detail. He's about to go out of the country for a couple of weeks and whatever. So he suggested, plus his kind of workload. So he suggested we set a date in June, which is a little farther out than. But anyway, fine. And he hasn't gotten back to me with a date yet. I just talked to him the day before yesterday, but I will obviously share that when I confirm that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you very much. Sounds terrific. I did look at the website.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Everything that's listed on that website sounded like what we were looking for. So
Yep.
great
Yep.
find.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And I've talked to a number of people, including Jim McDougall, who I've worked with, and who has known him for 30 years, says great. So, and several other people. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's probably something when that happens, we would probably want to loop Mike in. Has he worked with Mike Hale at all? You said he's been working with the Concom?
I can't say for sure. He's been working, I think one of the projects he's working on is the Salt Island situation.
Yeah.
And I think he indicated that there was more than one thing that he was working with the Concom on. I should mention that I also explained to him that at present we have no budget for this.
Next point. Yeah.
Because he is in business after all, and he totally understands that. And I indicated that one of the things we'd be looking for following a site visit would be a sense of, bottom line, top line, kind of what this would cost, because obviously that will play into what we're going to propose. So for the restoration. Yeah.
And a good alternative site, working on that. So yes.
Well, yeah, he may well have thoughts about that as well,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I can definitely, or Val, we could send an email maybe to Jill and just see if there's any follow-up on that, or Greg. I know that Greg was involved in the compilation of that property list. So.
Great.
So if there's nothing else, I think we can move on to Dogtown mapping. Any updates on that?
Not really.
Chris?
There hasn't been, I haven't, Jim and I haven't done any new things. There, I have an agenda list, as Jim reminds me. Jim is among other things, a farmer. He has his own farm in Topsfield, and so farming season is coming up here. And so I'm not sure how active the mapping thing is, but Jim says, please pester me, and look, if you have priorities. So if there are other if there are mapping things that are high on any of your priorities list, do let me know about that. And we'll there are, as we've discussed before, a number of questions about property ownerships within what we're defining as Dogtown.
Right.
So
Go ahead, Leslie.
Chris, thank you for everything you've done to get us where we are with that. What I'm wondering is, from your perspective, if there is a working group to get focused on this, is there any reason why we can't set ourselves a goal of creating an Excel spreadsheet that identifies ownership and level of risk around the properties that are now included under the general rubric of Dogtown?
Risk meaning risk of development or
Right.
yeah. I think the good news, I think it is that I think we have a pretty good handle on what the questionable properties are. And I think Greg, especially something I heard earlier this evening, I think Greg has a handle on these individual properties, so that at least and as Adrian has pointed out in the past, some of these properties, something we need to be prepared for in order to determine what their status is, so that actions could be taken one way or another. There needs to be legal input. So it's not enough to simply say, I mean, there may be some cases in which we find that Mr. Smith owns this property. He's easy to contact, although these tend to not be the case, because some of them, the deeds go back, centuries almost. But there may be some, easy takes, but there will be others where we will need to extract the property, so to speak, on a legal basis if there are, for example, multiple ownerships, which is a complication that frequently comes up in situations like this. So, yeah.
So I can appreciate all of that. What is the next step that it would be useful for us to take on to move towards the ultimate goal, which is to have all of Dogtown protected?
I guess if I could, wave the proverbial magic wand, what I would like to see, because Adrian has weighed in on this as well, and I know it's on her agenda, and I perceived a little bit of territoriality when we were talking about moving forward and identifying these things and what to do with them and all that. I would love it if we could have kind of a mind meld with Jim, who's done extensive work on this, not just this recent mapping stuff, but he's been involved in Dogtown forever, and this has been one of the priorities. Him, Adrian, and Greg, with me in attendance, to say, okay, here's what we're trying to do. Here's the project, and here's how we're going to approach it. This category of properties, which we can deal with this way. This category of properties we can deal with that way. That kind of thing. The same kind of approach we talked about with the compost facility.
Yeah, so I'm with you there about the there's pros and cons to the fact that we're not the only group which takes an interest in protecting Dogtown. There's a lot that's wonderful.
Correct.
And we're trying to mesh in an effective way with other groups who are already underway here.
Yes.
Is there any reason not to move towards setting up such a meeting?
Not as far as I'm concerned. But I hope not anyway. Jim and I and a natural heritage biologist, Tim Simmons, who's an expert on, again, land management issues and things like that, went and met with Adrienne at some point. And this was like months ago. And she was new to us and we were new to her. And it was a little, I don't go as far as to say it was awkward, but it wasn't the friendliest conversation. I think we've well moved past that. I've got to know Adrienne through, various other things, and I don't perceive any, sort of real issues. But yeah, I think that would be the ideal thing, to get all those people together, and I can't imagine that there would be a problem with that. I think it would be helpful if DPC made an official request, something like that, that says, we'd like to meet, kind of just what we've discussed. We'd like to meet with these people in order to discuss where we're at in terms of whatever the language would be, securing properties within Dogtown, something like that.
Yeah, and also to clarify how we can contribute to what is obviously going to be a team effort.
Sure. Yes.
Are you suggesting a motion, Chris?
Not necessarily if we don't need a motion, but I don't object to a motion if we think that's necessary. The motion would be to create a proposal that one or more members of the DPC plus the city planner and whatever Adrienne's appropriate title is, I always forget.
Conservation agent.
Agent, yeah, right. Meet to discuss the status of various, what's the word? Not mysterious, but various parcels in Dogtown. Should be an adjectives there, but I don't know what it is. Something like that.
I think, I don't think that a motion is needed at this time for that. I think we should see what the data is in the open space draft plan, because they're going to identify all those parcels, and certainly, a goal and an objective, or we can look at those parcels and see which ones would be an easy take and which ones would be more difficult. So I think that can wait, or not necessarily wait, but we should be able to look at that document. I think that document is going to give us some really good information. Richard?
Agreed.
It's a good listing. It doesn't, to my mind, answer the questions of these many, finger parcels and whatnot, which, as Chris was saying, have ownerships going back to the 1600s, and there's really no clear, a lot of them are landlocked, but they're still in this weird ownership limbo.
Yeah, some of the that finger parcel piece always looks kind of alarming. Like, oh my God, that in terms of lawyer work or whatever. Many of those finger pieces are tax taking parcels, so they are basically city property. But others of them, and one of Jim's maps, I think one of the ones I sent, is color coded of the ones that aren't, so designated. So yeah, but no, I don't feel like if this general approach meets with the commission's approval, I don't feel like I'm not going to lose energy on it. So move ahead.
I think it would be great if you could encourage that meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think also, Rich, I think when I was doing the survey for the open space, I think that's actually what their goals and objectives.
It is to move into, one of the goals is to further protect Dogtown, to help identify what parcels are at risk and to consolidate it into something with conservation restrictions.
Right.
To be protected in perpetuity.
I was just going to ask whether open space, we made an effort and defined what we think is Dogtown, with actual, lines on the map. Did open space do something similar? Because it's obviously important that we have the same map in mind of what Dogtown is.
I don't know if the two have been overlaid, in all
Okay.
honesty, because I'm still fairly new to that committee.
Yep. Okay, well, that's easy to check.
Yeah.
And probably easy to,
It's
conform.
probably pretty consistent, I would guess.
No, I mean, it was, but we didn't kind of make it up out of whole cloth. It's based on
Right.
various existing maps, so,
Right.
right.
And I
Good.
know that some of the properties had been taken by the city before. I think they were taken by eminent domain. Tax takings is a funny area of the law. You have to try to give notice to the property owners, and
Right.
it's a lengthy process, but it's not a difficult process. The problem with tax takings is, I think once you take them, they're supposed to go to the highest and best use. So you just need to be prepared to, argue that the highest and the best use is conservation in perpetuity, and make sure that you have the leadership in place at the city that agrees with that, because I am pretty sure that that's a decision that rests with the mayor of a city.
Yep. I
So,
think that's an important point you put your finger on, yes.
yeah,
For all these properties,
but I definitely think, it's one of our goals, for sure, is that there's no reason to have pieces of property hanging out there with unknown status, even though they're landlocked, if the city can pick up those parcels for not too much money in fees, and just get them protected. That makes me think, and I don't, probably needs to be explored further, but has anybody looked at doing a Dogtown zoning overlay district, a conservation zoning? I think that there are communities that have looked at conservation zoning. Zoning is its own, you just need the ZBA to undo, make exceptions to it, but it is another tool, a local tool that could potentially protect Dogtown to some extent. It might just be worth, a Google search or two, and I could certainly do.
sounds like it might have a political aspect as well. So, I mean, sort of.
Yeah,
I mean, eventually, I hope that's where we're moving. But
Right. Leslie, did you have a question?
I'd be happy to volunteer to see what I can understand about that. Bring it
Oh, that'd
back.
be great. That'd be
That's
great.
excellent. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So, the last thing on our agenda before public comment is, at some point, we're going to move beyond the compost facility, although we have a lot of work to do, and that we may want to have in the back of our mind when we're going to actually pick back up that 1985 management plan that the DAC revised. Chris did a lot of the rewrites of that. And, there were tons of people involved with that 85 plan. Like
Right.
each working group had 6 or 7 people. So,
Yeah.
that may be a model that we want to incorporate, that we set up working groups. And
I think that's our existing goals list, basically. And
Okay.
again, the advisory committee, did a lot of work in this recent period, the Friends of Dogtown, et cetera, to update it and, add appropriate pieces. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, super. But for now, we'll work on data gathering, information gathering, consultants, things like that, that based on our short-term goal, which is really getting out a report to phase out the compost facility, if it's possible. Leslie.
Can I suggest that for now, the key objective we have short-term is to make sure that the DPW budget includes money for increased JRM pickups.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really
that is-
front and center. That's the beginning of change.
That is like within the next week. Like we start exploring that tomorrow because budget meetings are coming up. And
Right.
so.
And I was going to check with Jenny on that.
Yeah, and we want to be in, our goal was to be in this budget cycle, and we want to be in it.
Right. So
good reiteration, because I just wrote that down on my to-do list. So,
Can I also mention,
sure.
when we spoke about this in DPC a number of months ago when Adrienne was with us, she mentioned that if we have a budget ask, we're going to want to be meeting with city council members to explain why it matters. So I'm not sure where we are with that in terms of the timeline, but just want to remind us all that that was her recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think first we need to find out if it's been submitted. I don't know what the protocol is if it hasn't been submitted into the DPW budget, if we can ask for some sort of modification. But then, yes, speaking at the budget and finance meetings and those types of things to make sure if it's in there, it stays in there. Or, if it's not in there, like I said, it's so hard to speculate because there is a pretty sizable amount of money in the DPW budget for recycling, different things like that, waste that I just don't have enough detail on to know what it's allocated for.
Right, which is why it's so critical that we have a DPW person participating in these meetings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to any public comment we might have. I see that there are a couple of members of the community. If anybody would like to speak, you just need to raise your hand. And you just need to state your name and your address.
It's Phil Schwartz, 4 Old Farm Lane up in Lanesville.
Phil.
Just want to say that I am happy to assist in any way we can with the data gathering for any part of the argument to be constructed to relocate the compost facility. I had a conversation a while back with Cindy about this, and we came to Gloucester from Framingham. My son still lives in our old house there. And I don't know whether Framingham made the cut or didn't in the spreadsheet, but I'm certainly happy to go and talk to them or to anybody else once we have a set of questions to ask. I am not tremendously knowledgeable, but well enough versed in using assessor's maps to make sure that our Sunday morning hikes don't infringe on anybody's wishes about whether people come across their property or not, because it's such a patchwork of private and municipal and land conservation parcels that the trail system runs on. So I can help with a number of aspects of this, and I'm just happy to volunteer my time now that I am retired. So,
All right,
all I
well,
wanted to
thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you very much,
Thank
Phil.
you, Phil.
We'll definitely take you up on that. Diane just texted me that she's walking Pole Hill, so she can't speak.
Good for her.
So, yeah, exactly. So we have another matters not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours of the scheduled meeting. Do we have any topics to go under there?
Cindy?
Yes.
Thank you. So I just wanted to recognize the 13 folks that helped us with the Dogtown cleanup, because it was a great cleanup. It was 1 hour. We came up with 23 bags filled to the top. And I just think this is a good opportunity to recognize people that rolled up their sleeves and really worked hard. We did that area behind where the stump dump used to be, through the woods where that we call it the party area. But Cindy Dunn, Sandy Barry, Sarah Roberts, my husband Paul, Holly Dogwillow, who's the HR director, Val Marino, who works for the city, Angela Marino, Sam Poole, Randy Burley, Lisa Rigsby, Diane Wood Samuelson, who is now in Poles Hill and is on the call, which is awesome. Hal and Cora Mackins, he's a big runner. And Danny Stotzer, which, whom everybody knows, and me. And we tackled it and we worked hard together and it felt really good. But just tons of cans, bottles, nips, trash, tequila, broken glass, and even $6. But it was a great day, and we took pictures and posted them and got some nice thank yous from the community. So just something little that we're doing to do what's right in Dogtown. So
Great.
Thank you to all. And I'm glad you included yourself in that. Thank you, Val, because Val actually coordinated the entire cleaning. So bravo.
You're better getting in the swamps than I am, though, Cindy. I got to say, you got the boots on.
Well, you know,
I'm a little bit more.
You know, yeah.
But thank you.
And what about you had mentioned at the beginning the possibility that you would become an ex officio member? Are they looking to change?
I am looking to do that.
Changing.
Yeah, I think it makes sense when counselors are on any board that we just be ex officio. That's what I am on the Council on Aging board.
Okay.
So I do attend all their meetings. I just don't vote. So it doesn't. It's whether it's called ex officio or just a non-voting member. It just seems to be right. So we're looking at doing that throughout all of our boards and commissions where counselors are part of.
While is that going to be a blanket change, or are you going to go through each ordinance? Excuse me.
I could grab ours and move it forward, but Jason Grow, who's an at-large counselor, he was interested in doing that because he's on the Human Rights Commission, and they're kind of working on that with his role as well, because he's an appointed member. I appointed him on the Human Rights Commission, and we're trying to get it right. And I said, let's just do it for all of the ordinances and be consistent, because it makes sense.
Well, maybe what we could do, whereas that's coming up, maybe each of us could do another read of the ordinance. And, maybe while it's opened up, if there's any other changes we want to make, if we find that there were things that worked, things that didn't work, it may be a good time to do it. And I think that we should solicit Mike's opinion on that. See if there's anything that he would like to change.
I think that's a great idea. And I did work with him on this original ordinance. I did get his feedback.
Yes.
And I got Jim Destino's feedback as well before the council reviewed it.
Yep.
But I think it's always good to look at it and update and make it.
While it's going to go through the process, we
Right,
might as well
exactly.
just, there may be nothing to change, but I thought if you're going to, because it's a process to change an ordinance, we might as well just give it a quick read or a longer read and, see if there's any changes we think should be made.
Yeah, good idea.
Great. So I just sent it to all of you. So if you want to take a look at that, that would be great.
So do we need to, before we adjourn, do we need to summarize any of our next action items, or are people clear with what we're doing next? I know I'm going to speak with Mike Hale about these meetings. Val and I are going to figure out where the short-term contract money is, if it made it into the budget, and how we're going to handle that, and just start working on criteria for analyzing the municipal data, incorporate some other folks in, and start working on that. Chris is going to continue to work with the consultant. Leslie, you are going to look into conservation zoning.
Yes.
Okay. And Rich, you're going to help us with the municipal data once we have the criteria set out that we want to ask, which I hope we can put that together pretty quickly.
I can
Right.
try and put action items into the minutes.
You can, Okay.
I think we've also spoken about the importance of the open space document that's being released tomorrow
yes,
as a way to orient us and begin to shape more specific tasks around the preservation of Dogtown specifically.
Right,
I
yeah,
think-
and related to that, looking at maybe meeting with Greg, Adrienne, whoever, to look at these specific parcels and see where we need to go to, bring them into the fold, so to speak.
and maybe an email to Jill about where they are at in looking at city properties. And is that something they need assistance with, or is that something that they are actually accomplishing?
So who's going to do that? Talk to Jill.
That's Cindy.
You're smiling in my direction.
I'm looking at Val Gilman, but I'm happy to do
Oh.
it if you are too busy, because I know that you have a tremendous amount on your plate.
I mean, I meet with Jill and the mayor every other week, so not on this week. So, so I will, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much. So, well, I think that's it. Does anybody else have anything? 6:43.
That's
so not
plenty.
too bad. Okay.
Nice to see you all. Last time I was on a
Yeah.
call, I got spooked in
Yeah, the
City Hall when the
power
lights
went
went out, and I tried to stay with the call, and then I got scared because the sirens started to go off. And
Right.
We're glad you're safe.
Yeah. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
By roll call, Rich,
yes.
Val,
yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Thank you all very much. It's good to
Thank
see
you,
you. We'll
Cindy.
be in
Thank
touch.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay,
Yeah.
Nice
good
to
night.
see
All
you.
of you.
Thank
Yeah,
you
good
all.
to see you
Bye.
all. Bye-bye
Bye-bye.
now.